On Sunday, June 25th, Communist forces attacked the Republic of Korea. This attack has made it clear beyond all doubt that the international communist movement is willing to use armed invasion to conquer independent nations. An act of aggression such as this, it creates a very real danger to the security of all free nations.
This was when I was in the Navy at 17, and this is when I was in the Marine Corps at 19, still in the Navy, attached to the Marine Corps, and this was when I was in Korea.
We know that the cost of freedom is high, but we are determined to preserve our freedom no matter what the cost.
We landed on the beach and they called our name out, and of course you could hear the guns booming in the background.
My job was to save lives no matter what the conditions were. When a Marine got wounded, I had to go out there and try to save his life.
And when the war broke out, whatever they needed, that's what you did. So they took me out of the kitchen with a Cook's MOS and put me on the new rocket launchers.
21 years after it ended in 1953, that would be 1974, I was getting off an airplane at Osan Air Base in South Korea. I felt it was my obligation to give something back to the country.
Thousands and thousands of Chinese communists came into Korea from the north, over the Yalu River, and drove our people back toward the south. There were 200,000 Chinese.
I kept asking myself, what the heck are we doing here? Because the country just was totally disaster.
Korea was leveled. By 1953, everything was destroyed. There wasn't anything standing anywhere.
When I got there that afternoon, I noticed a couple body bags and a couple of Marines walking around wounded. And I said to the sergeant, what happened? He says, 2 hours before you got here, the Chinese shelled us. Because right in front of the Marine camp, about 2 miles away, there was a big hill, and the Chinese occupied that hill. And occasionally they would shell the Marine camp. And the Marine camp, of course, shelled them back. So that same day, I could have got killed. I was there 2 hours earlier.
They had a small detachment, and I became the detachment commander. I called it a troop commander, and I was the commander for, I think, 90 days. A senior sergeant in charge of one of our comm centers left the comm center unsecured. And so then I needed to have that investigated and make a decision on what should be done on that. And making those decisions and deciding what you're going to do to somebody, where you may end up killing somebody's career or putting somebody in jail, whether they were guilty or not. It was a very difficult thing for me to have to deal with.
When they integrated South Korean soldiers, the replacements, trying to talk to them because they're talking Korean. They knew a little bit, but you had to talk to some of them like you were talking to a first grader or a second grader to pronounce the words. But the worry was taken with him if you went on a patrol and you had to yell orders at him real fast to get up the hill. He allowed to hesitate long enough to get you shot, not knowing what's going on. It looked like confusion to him. But that was a tough part. North Koreans were telling him something in North Korean, and I said to him, what are they saying? They're saying, shoot the guy in the hole with you. We got wine, women, and song. You can come over here. Well, needless to say, I put a 45 to his chest. You come across the foxhole, you're dead. Then the next morning, I thought, that's stupid. Why would he tell you that? I reached over, shook his hand, patted him on the shoulder, and he knew what I meant.
I would say in probably the last 10 years, there's been much more of an interest in kind of talking about his experiences. The first conversation we ever had, and it was about his experience on the way to Korea, where he was in a ship. Bunks were 3 people high, and how seasick they were, and how long it was, and how uncomfortable it was to be there, and kind of like how unpleasant that experience was just getting to where he was. He's really decided to talk about not just the hardship, but the experience of serving. And so people have a better appreciation for what it really involves, and he feels really strongly that sharing it is important for people just for the purposes of history and also so that people really appreciate the freedom that was fought for.
I went from Incheon. They put me on a train, and I rode a train with a 50 caliber machine gun on it, and the front of it was sandbagged and Korean soldiers all the way back to Busan. And then they reassigned me back up. They gave me my choice of where I wanted to go, and I went to Daegu. I was with the 36th Quartermaster Battalion. When I first got there, we had a major who was in charge of our unit, and he was very lenient. So we had orphans. We had about 10 orphans living on our camp. We had a barbed wire enclosure, and we had about 10 orphans that we took care of. We were their parents, and I helped this other guy. We had this one little guy. He had an army coat, he had an army jacket, a hat. He went to school, and we fed him out of the mess hall. And one day the major came in and he said, "Ken, I'm being transferred, and you're getting a new commanding officer." And they made us get rid of all of the little orphans, and that kind of broke my heart. After that, I never made any relationships with the Koreans because it kind of hurt me, what happened there. I didn't see why we couldn't keep them, but I understand it was a military facility, and we probably shouldn't have had them in the first place, but we did.
It came on July 27, 1953. While the communists signed at Panmunjom, General Clark, in ceremonies at the UN base camp in Munsan, signed 6 copies of the document which would end the bloodshed.
He also shared with us pretty recently, he worked on the armistice, the negotiation for kind of like the ceasing of conflict and kind of the terms of the agreement.
We were near K2 Airport, and they went back and forth, and they counted everything. They counted jeeps, they counted soldiers. Provisions were that neither side could increase their military capability. Of course, we let the North Koreans cheat on that. So it was very interesting. I was in charge of the motor pool and the officers' bar. They had a little bar there, so I had a good job.
But I was a refugee all the way down in Busan. Refugee life is a very terrible looking life, but appreciate for the United States. We bring up my country to number 10 country in the world right now. Economically.
I returned to Korea in 2016 on their revisit program, and the place has totally changed. Korea is, believe it or not, cleaner than the United States. The roads are perfect. There's no litter along the side of the streets, and there's skyscrapers. The people just treated us terrific over there.
United States of alliance, that's very important. We have to keep tight relation in Korea. Sooner or later, we solve the problem, then bring the peace in the world. That's what we're looking for.
The Mimae ceremony, the Missing in Action, is a ceremony where they talk about the guys that are still missing in action. And we did that to keep their memory alive, because our goal yet is to bring back all of the people that were missing in action.
William Hare, Joseph Hatch, James Hawkins.
It's tough when a son, parents gets an MIA letter from the government that their son's missing in action. They don't know if he's dead or he's alive, he's a prisoner. It's a tough situation. Sometimes you got to wait years before you know your relative got killed or or it's under the ground somewhere.
This ceremony, it means a little bit more to me, I imagine, than some of the other men. But I had 2 men in my unit. I didn't know them personally, but they were part of the unit. I've seen them walking around. And believe it or not, in July 1953, the 2 of them disappeared. Somebody had been taken as prisoner, we're not sure what, but were never heard from again. So this ceremony means a lot to me.
The symbols that they use, you know, is the chair, the empty chair, the glass upside down, the rose, and the bitter lemon. Those are all symbols of what we're trying to convey to the public about the missing in action. So I think it's a very touching ceremony. Every time I watch it, I kind of get tears in my eyes.
And tiny bubbles that make you glad all over.
Yeah, hopefully Korean War veterans here, God bless them, a healthy, longer life. That's what we wish.
The younger people today don't understand that freedom isn't free. You'll always have to pay for the price for freedom. And I worry that, that we haven't learned our lessons in history. War is, it's a terrible thing. Everybody said it was a police action, but to me it wasn't a police action. I've watched Marines, a whole division of Marines march by all day long, and it sure as heck didn't look like a police action to me.
I think it's the greatest thing for a teenager to join the military. I think they get a lot out of it. It makes you grow up fast.
A lot of responsibility, yeah, and it's all just basic attention to detail.
The government gives you a lot of benefits for serving, and would I do it all over again? I sure would.
Every day and every night you walk the